Picture this. In the heart of a corporate metropolis where everyone is hustling, performing, and desperately competing for the next promotion, there's one man sitting quietly in a coffee shop. No designer clothes, no luxury watch catching the light, no frantic phone calls about deals or deadlines. He's reading, actually reading, while chaos swirls around him. The businessman next to him is stress-eating while yelling at his assistant. The influencer at the corner table is having a breakdown because her latest post flopped. The young entrepreneur is pitching investors who look bored and cruel. But this man, he's untouchable. Not because he's rich, but because he's free. And that freedom is about to destroy everything you think you know about power. He represents something terrifying to the system. The system can't buy what he possesses. His soul isn't for sale, his time isn't negotiable, and his happiness doesn't depend on a bank account. He's discovered the secret that keeps the powerful awake at night. Freedom isn't about having more. It's about needing less. And that realization makes him the most dangerous person alive. And right now, as you watch this video, you're about to discover why men like him are society's greatest threat, and why you might be closer to becoming one than you realize. The truth they're hiding from you. If you've ever felt like a hamster on a wheel, running faster and faster but getting nowhere, if you've ever wondered why success feels so empty even when you achieve it, then what I'm about to reveal will destroy every lie you've been sold about what makes life worth living. Carl Jung, the man who mapped the human psyche, and Niccolò Machiavelli, who decoded the mechanics of power, both discovered the same terrifying truth. The system doesn't want you to be happy. It wants you to be hungry. Because hungry people are controllable people, and the system can't buy someone who's already full. This isn't about being broke or giving up ambition. This is about wielding a form of power so rare that society will do everything to convince you it doesn't exist. Jung's forbidden discovery. Carl Jung spent decades studying why people feel empty despite having everything. What he found shook the foundations of modern psychology. Most people aren't living their own lives. They're living the life that was programmed into them before they could resist. Jung called this the collective unconscious, an invisible prison where your dreams aren't really your dreams, your fears aren't really your fears, and your desires aren't really your desires. They belong to the crowd. You think you want that promotion, that house, that validation on social media. But Jung would ask, do you want it, or were you hypnotized into wanting it? The man who doesn't chase money has broken free from this psychological slavery. He's what Jung called individuated. He's discovered who he really is beneath all the programming. And once you taste that freedom, once you know the difference between your authentic self and your programmed self, you become ungovernable. Here's Jung's most dangerous insight. Your greatest fear isn't death or poverty. It's the fear of being nobody. Society weaponizes this terror by convincing you that you are what you earn. You are what you own. You are what others think of you. But when you integrate your shadow, when you face and accept the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide, you realize you were always somebody, with or without external validation. And that's when you become truly dangerous to a system built on keeping you insecure. Machiavelli's secret, the art of not wanting. While Jung was mapping the psyche, Machiavelli was decoding power itself. In The Prince, he revealed something that still terrifies rulers today. True power isn't the ability to take what you want. It's the ability to not want what they're offering. Machiavelli understood that control works through desire. Make someone desperately want something, and you own them. Promise them relief from their suffering, and they'll give you their freedom. But here's the terrifying part. What happens when someone no longer wants what you're selling? The man who doesn't chase money possesses what Machiavelli called virtù, not virtue in the moral sense, but the inner strength to remain complete regardless of external circumstances. He can't be bribed because he doesn't want what you're offering. He can't be threatened because he's already faced his worst fears. He can't be seduced because he's found something better than what the world provides. Machiavelli would recognize such a man as the ultimate political threat. Someone who cannot be governed because they've learned to govern themselves. The shadow economy of human misery. Here's what Jung discovered that the entire economy doesn't want you to know. Modern capitalism runs on your psychological wounds. Jung talked about the shadow, the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide or deny. Every insecurity you feel, every inadequacy you carry, every fear that keeps you awake at night. There's an industry built around selling you temporary relief from those feelings. Feel ugly? Buy beauty products. Feel stupid? Buy courses and credentials. Feel unloved? Buy status symbols. Feel powerless? Buy things that make you feel important. The entire system feeds on your psychological suffering, and healing those wounds would crash the economy. The man who doesn't chase money has done Jung's shadow work. He's faced his darkness, integrated his fears, and healed his wounds internally. He doesn't buy things to fill voids because he's filled the voids himself. He doesn't seek external validation because he's learned to validate himself. And this makes him economically useless and psychologically dangerous. Because when people see someone genuinely content, someone who doesn't need constant stimulation or gratification, it forces them to confront their own emptiness, and that confrontation is terrifying. Machiavelli's ultimate insight, voluntary slavery. Machiavelli understood that the most effective control isn't force. It's making people believe they're free while they're actually enslaved. Modern society has perfected this art. You think you're free because you can choose from 1,000 brands, but you're enslaved, forced to work jobs you hate, to buy things you don't need, just to impress people you don't even like. The man who doesn't chase money sees through this illusion. He recognizes what Machiavelli knew. The chains that bind you aren't made of iron. They're made of desire. And the moment you stop desiring what the system offers, you stop being its slave. This is why every message you receive tells you to want more, achieve more, become more. Because the moment you feel complete as you are, the moment you realize you're enough, the entire game collapses. But here's where it gets truly dangerous. People are waking up to Machiavelli's insight. The chains that bind you aren't made of iron. They're made of desire. This is why minimalism, voluntary simplicity, and financial independence movements are quietly gaining ground, despite massive cultural resistance. But society fights back viciously against this awakening. Jung's individuation versus society's programming. Carl Jung discovered that becoming a complete human being, what he called individuation, is the most threatening thing you can do to a society that depends on incomplete people. Incomplete people are perfect consumers, perfect employees, perfect citizens. They follow orders, buy products, seek approval, and never question the system because they're too busy trying to fix themselves with external solutions. But the individuated person, the one who's integrated all aspects of their personality, including their shadow, they can't be programmed anymore. They think for themselves. They act from inner conviction rather than outer pressure. They create their own meaning rather than accepting society's definitions of success and failure. Jung warned that society would fight your individuation process every step of the way because a room full of individuated people would be ungovernable. They wouldn't vote based on fear, buy based on insecurity, or work based on desperation. They would make decisions from wisdom, not weakness. This is why the education system teaches compliance over curiosity, why social media rewards conformity over authenticity, why corporate culture punishes independent thinking. The system needs you to remain psychologically fragmented so it can sell you the missing pieces forever. But what happens when you refuse to play this game? You become part of a war. Why the system declares war on inner peace. Both Jung and Machiavelli understood that those in power must keep the masses in a state of perpetual agitation to maintain control. Jung called it possession by archetypes, people becoming unconsciously driven by primal forces like the need for security, status, or belonging. Machiavelli described how rulers keep subjects obedient by alternating between hope and fear, never allowing them to feel truly secure or satisfied. Modern society has perfected these techniques. Social media keeps you comparing yourself to others. News media keeps you afraid and angry. Consumer culture keeps you wanting more. Work culture keeps you exhausted and dependent. The system needs you to be perpetually unbalanced, always seeking, never finding, because balanced people don't consume desperately or comply automatically. The man who doesn't chase money has stepped out of this psychological warfare. He's achieved what Jung called psychological centering, a state of inner equilibrium that can't be disturbed by external chaos. He doesn't scroll social media looking for validation, doesn't watch news seeking stimulation, doesn't buy products hoping for happiness. He's found the eye of the hurricane and made it his permanent residence. This inner peace is so rare, so threatening to a system built on inner turmoil, that society immediately tries to pathologize it. They call such people lazy, unmotivated, unrealistic, or depressed. But the truth is the opposite. They've become so motivated by intrinsic values that extrinsic motivators no longer work on them. And this is where the real danger begins. The contagion of freedom. Jung discovered something that terrifies those who profit from mass conformity. Authenticity is contagious. When people encounter someone genuinely at peace, someone who's not performing, not pretending, not desperately seeking approval, it awakens something dormant in their own soul. The man who doesn't chase money spreads this awakening wherever he goes. His peace highlights others' anxiety. His contentment exposes others' desperation. His freedom reveals others' chains. He doesn't preach. He simply exists as proof that another way of living is possible. This is why such men are often isolated or attacked. They represent an existential threat to a system that depends on everyone believing there's no alternative to the rat race. If one person can be happy without endless accumulation, maybe everyone can. If one person can find meaning without status-seeking, maybe the whole game is rigged. The 4 pillars of unshakable freedom. Drawing from Jung's psychology and Machiavelli's realism, here are the 4 characteristics that make a man truly ungovernable. Shadow integration. Jung insisted you must face the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide. Your anger, selfishness, fears, inadequacies. Until you acknowledge these aspects, they control you from the unconscious. But once integrated, they become sources of strength. The man who's made peace with his darkness can't be blackmailed with his own secrets. Value independence. Machiavelli knew that those who define their own principles are harder to corrupt. The man who doesn't chase money has examined every belief society programmed into him. He's kept what serves his soul and discarded the rest. His compass points to his own true north, not society's magnetic fields. Emotional self-sufficiency. Jung called this holding the tension, the ability to remain centered regardless of external chaos. The man who doesn't chase money generates his own emotional states rather than depending on circumstances for happiness. This makes him immune to manipulation through fear or desire. Existential courage. Both thinkers understood that authenticity requires tremendous courage. The courage to disappoint others, to be misunderstood, to walk alone when necessary. This man has developed this courage by repeatedly choosing truth over comfort, authenticity over approval. These 4 pillars create psychological sovereignty, an internal kingdom no external force can conquer. The price of freedom. Let's be honest about what this path costs. You will lose friends who benefited from your people-pleasing. You will disappoint family members who had plans for your life. You will be called selfish by people who exploited your selflessness, lazy by people who mistake activity for achievement. Jung called this the loneliness of individuation. You'll walk through a desert of social isolation as you shed the false self society constructed for you. But here's what you gain. You wake up every morning as yourself, not as a performance. You make decisions from wisdom, not fear. You build relationships based on truth, not mutual dysfunction. The loneliness is temporary. Once you've done this work, you attract others who've done it too. These relationships are rarer, but infinitely more nourishing than connections based on shared neuroses. Why, this threatens everything. The entire system assumes predictable human behavior. Economics assumes you'll trade happiness for money because you fear poverty. Politics assumes you'll vote from fear rather than principle. Society assumes you'll conform rather than risk rejection. But the man who's integrated his shadow and developed inner authority breaks all these assumptions. He can't be predicted, controlled, or manipulated through normal channels because he's transcended the psychological vulnerabilities those channels exploit. If enough people achieved this integration, the system would have to evolve or collapse. This is why authenticity is discouraged, why inner work is marginalized, and why psychological maturity is pathologized. The revolutionary act. Here's the paradox both Jung and Machiavelli would appreciate. The most revolutionary thing you can do is become internally peaceful. Not passive, but centered. Not withdrawn, but grounded. Not indifferent, but unshakable in your core identity. The man who doesn't chase money has ended the civil war within himself. He's integrated his opposing forces into a coherent whole. This creates what Jung called psychological momentum, the ability to move through life with purpose rather than being blown around by circumstances. How to begin? Start with brutal self-honesty. Spend time in actual solitude, not consuming content, but sitting with your thoughts and feelings. Write, reflect, pay attention to your automatic reactions and hidden motivations. This is shadow work, the foundation of everything else. Question every assumption about success, happiness, and worth. Ask, is this true, or was I taught to believe it? Do I want this, or do I think I should want it? Reduce dependencies gradually. Simplify your lifestyle. Build skills that make you self-sufficient. Create relationships based on mutual growth, not mutual neediness. Develop your inner authority. Start making decisions based on your own judgment, rather than automatically deferring to external authorities. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means trusting your wisdom after you've cultivated it. The ultimate freedom. The man who doesn't chase money has achieved what Jung considered the highest human development, the ability to be fully himself in a world that profits from his pretense. He's not trying to impress anyone because he's impressed with his own growth. He's not trying to prove anything because he has nothing to prove. This doesn't make him complacent. It makes him more dynamic because his actions come from inspiration, not desperation. He creates because he wants to, not because he has to. He gives because generosity flows from abundance, not because it's expected. He works, but his work expresses his gifts rather than sacrifices his time. He earns money, but money serves his purposes rather than defining his worth. He engages with society on his own terms. The call. So I leave you with Jung's essential question. Who are you when no one is watching? When there's nothing to gain and nothing to lose? When all the masks come off and all the games end? That person, your authentic self, beneath all the conditioning, that's who the world needs. Not another consumer, not another competitor, but you, the real you, the integrated you who's done the shadow work and claimed psychological sovereignty. The world doesn't need more people chasing money and status. It needs people who found something better to chase: truth, beauty, meaning, wisdom. It needs people who can't be bought because they've bought themselves back from a culture that tried to auction their souls. The system can't buy what you're about to become. In a world of people selling themselves in pieces, the person who remains whole is revolutionary. In a culture addicted to more, the person who has enough is radical. In a society driven by fear, the person who acts from love is dangerous. Your authentic self is waiting. Your psychological freedom is possible. Your sovereignty is within reach. The question isn't whether you can afford to take this journey. It's whether you can afford not to. If this resonates with you, if you're ready to join others who are choosing authenticity over approval and freedom over conformity, subscribe to continue this conversation. Because the path to psychological sovereignty isn't walked alone, and there's more truth to uncover together. What are you going to do about it?